بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه. Verily, as we have indicated before we started, that this is an important topic. It talks about your prayer, and that is one of the important, not to say the important, practical ibadah of yours after shahadat la ilaha illallah is the prayer. So we need to know what makes your prayer invalid. What makes your prayer invalid? So first one, he says, that is tayaqqun al-hadath. The person had remembered, or he had actually invalidated his prayer. So he remembered that he is not a wudu, or he remembered that he was in janaba, or while he was praying, he had invalidated his prayer by passing wind. And here says tayaqqun. Tayaqqun means that is you are sure. So Prophet ﷺ, he says to a companion who had asked that sometimes he imagines that something had happened to him in the prayer. Imagines. He's not sure. Did he pass wind? Did he not? So he's imagining. This comes to the person called waswasa, whispering. A lot. So the Prophet ﷺ, he had cured his waswasa. He said, you should not leave the prayer until you hear it or you smell it. Here, hear it and smell it, it means certainty. It doesn't mean the actual hearing and the actual seeing or the actual smelling. For verily, you could be deaf. How can you hear it? You could have a flu. How can you smell it? But if you are sure that you have released wind, maybe you haven't got a flu, but your wind hasn't got a smell. But you're 100%, you passed wind. So, this person, if he had remembered that he was not on wudu, or he had invalidated his wudu in the prayer, then his prayer is invalid, and he should now repeat his prayer if he had finished, or an option. If his wudu place is close by, that is, to stop the prayer, or make wudu, and continue with what he has done already. You could have asked, but already, maybe, well, he had remembered, let's say that he was not on wudu. That means from the beginning he was not on wudu. How can he continue on something that he had prayed without wudu? Well, because what happened to the Prophet ﷺ, which is the hadith in Sunan Abi Dawood, on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet ﷺ one day in Salat al-Fajr, he made takbir. Then he remembered he was on janaba. So his takbir al-ihram was what? On janaba. So he had made a gesture to the companions, stay put. Why he made a gesture? Because he's in a prayer. He went and he had ghusl. Next, just see next, not far away from him. Comes from the door where he prays to the room of his, in Aisha. He made the ghusl. And he came and he was dripping water. And he continued. He did not say Allahu Akbar again. We have gained a lot from that narration. So that the person, if he had prayed part of his prayer, whether he was on wudu and then he invalidated his wudu, or whether he was not on wudu and then he remembered, and he could continue on what he has prayed already. But if he finished the prayer, then he remembered that he was on wudu, because he was not on wudu, then he has to repeat the prayer. What is the proof for that? Well, Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. One day he had prayed the Fajr, and after he prayed, he remembered he was on janaba. He led the companions, and then he made himself a ghusl. He repeated the prayer, but he did not command the companions to repeat the prayer. So if this person is certain that he had invalidated his prayer by remembering of a passing wind, then he has to stop the prayer, either to continue if his wudu close by, his wudu, or to start from the beginning. Now, as I said, for the person who is deaf and the person who's got flu, the hadith here doesn't mean that you have to smell it and you have to hear it. It means certainty. There is a shaitan who is special, and he's got a specialty which is in that area of yours, in the private parts. You start pulling hairs of yours from the back in order to make you feel that you have passed wind, especially those got waswasa. So don't bother about it. You have to make sure that you have passed wind. Not you think, oh, I think maybe not. Maybe not, stay in the prayer. Stay in the prayer. Don't leave the prayer. If you have given up to the shaitan once, easy to give up to him every time you pray. He's going to play around with you. But if he sees that you are firm and you're not going to be fooled by him, he will look for another customer. Now, number two.
Number two, intentionally not performing a pillar, prerequisite of the prayer without a valid excuse.
Right. Now, you have left a prerequisite or a pillar. We have said before, what is the difference between pillar and prerequisite? Ismail, what is the difference between pillar and prerequisite? Forgotten. Apple. What's the pillar and prerequisite? Different.
Is the pillar in the prayer and prerequisite outside of the prayer?
Pillar is part of the action. Could be prayer, could be anything else. And prerequisite from outside the action. Example, in the prayer, the pillar is to make ruku'. And from the conditions is to make wudu. Because condition is not part of the prayer. In the wudu, a pillar is to wash the face. As for the purity of the water, it's a condition, but it is not part of the action. Yes? Where is the book? Have you gone? You should have one. All this information is lost. Get a book. Very important. After this, you'll find yourself student knowledge. You'll be lots of knowledge. When we finish the book, lots of information will be gathered in your mind. Don't lose it. Believe me. Right. So, the person, if he had left a rukn or a shart, pillar or prerequisite, deliberately and without an excuse, then it's invalid. Prophet ﷺ, he saw a man who prayed quickly. So which pillar, ya Ismail, ya Umar, which pillar, ya Ismail, that he had jeopardized this man when he prayed quickly?
That is the prerequisite.
What is the pillar that he had? Anybody? Thawban. When he made prayer quickly, what is that pillar that he had missed here? Violated it. Talha. What about me? Khushu' is not a pillar.
Ruku'.
He made ruku', but similar to the khushu', what is that? Tranquility. Well done. Tranquility. Khushu' means that we don't think except for the prayer. That's the ultimate. But the tranquility that he has to settle. Not boom, 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 boom. So he did boom, 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 boom. He had lost many pillars. So this person, he prayed quickly. Prophet ﷺ said to him, what? Go back, you haven't prayed. 3 times he'd done that. So he said, Messenger of Allah, teach me. And also, a man, he prayed and he had seen the Prophet of Allah on his foot a dry spot. So he said to him, repeat the wudu and repeat that prayer. Can anybody tell me what is that been missing? First of all, the pillar, condition. The Prophet of Allah told him to go back. Tell me.
Said the wudu.
Yes, the wudu. What's wrong with wudu?
The feet.
What's wrong with the feet?
They're not fully. It's not fully been done.
Fully done. So he did not wash the fully done. Very well done. It's a pillar or condition?
It is a pillar.
Pillars, but wudu. Pillar wudu, correct. So he's wudu. But now, why didn't he just say to him, go and wash your feet? He not washed all his sins except for that little spot on his feet. He just said, wash your feet and repeat the prayer. But he just didn't go and repeat the whole. Anybody?
The
What?
period. The time period.
Time period. What was that? Condition or a pillar? From the wudu?
That's condition.
Condition. Well done. It's outside the act, which is close sequence, we call it, we said. And you have to do the wudu with close sequence. This guy, he had made wudu and he did not wash his feet properly. The size of a dirham coin was spotted on his feet. Because he prayed now, there's a time gap. So when he wants to now to make the wudu, he has to make it from the beginning, not just to wash the feet. Because his limbs are dry. So the time gap, which is a close sequence, is broken, which is a condition. You remember that? He was? Close condition. Are you with me? Tell me.
I'm trying to remember.
Okay. Person who had made wudu, washed his face, phone call came to him. Salaamu alaikum, alaikum assalam, and he had, mashallah, 2, 3, 5 minutes talk. After he finished the call, what does he do? Does he continue or repeat the wudu?
Can you repeat something?
You have to repeat the wudu because you have broken the sequence. Do you understand me? You've broken the sequence. I've said that a long time ago, the wudu, remember? But this person, if he had made wudu, started, made his mouth, nose, face, tap in the kitchen or the toilet upstairs, finished. Something ceased to give water. He went downstairs to look for the water. He went to the other basin in the kitchen, doesn't work. The sink doesn't work. Then another toilet, it worked. Took a bit of time. Does he repeat the wudu or does he continue? Continue. Well done. Does not repeat. Why?
It's not his fault.
It's not his fault because it's part of the wudu. He's not really on the phone, something different. It's part of the wudu. He's delayed because of the water had stopped. And his mind in his wudu. Close sequence still there. The close sequence is broken. It's not just because of the time, because of his mind. His mind broke the wudu and he went to phone call. This one is still wudu, regardless of the time. Okay. Now, after we have talked about, alhamdulillah, this, we will go ahead with the third condition.
Number 3, intentionally eating or drinking during the prayer.
Intentionally drinking or eating. Person having a sandwich while he's praying, it's not allowed. Having a juice drink while he's praying, it's not allowed. So that will invalidate the prayer. All the scholars that we know about, they said he who had eaten or drank in the prayer deliberately, he must repeat his prayer. Number 4.
Number 4, intentionally speaking something not due what is needed for the prayer.
Intentionally speaking to something which is not to do with the prayer. What does that mean, nothing to do with the prayer? For verily, if the person said, Subhanallah, for somebody, Imam said something, that's part of the prayer. So if a person does talk other than the prayer itself, deliberately, and it's a long talk, and this deliberately, of course, if he's not ignorant, he's ignorant of something else. At the time, from the Prophet ﷺ, when he was starting the prayer, talking was allowed. Zayd ibn Arqam, he said, we used to talk in the prayer. He will talk to his brother while he's praying. While he's praying, we'll be talking to him. Until the following verse will reveal, وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ. We have been commanded, وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ. This is Surah Al-Baqarah. That is, stand to your Lord with qunut. That means khushu', with submissiveness, with humility. And that would implement or entails no talk. So we have been commanded not to talk in the prayer. And also Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he says, whenever we used to say salam to the Prophet while he's praying, he used to return the salam. Wa alaykum as-salam while he's praying. Until we went back from al-Najashi, from al-Habasha, we came to him after the migration, and we have said salam to him. He did not reply the salam. He didn't say alaykum salam. And then he said, inna fi salati shughla. Verily, in the prayer there is something that will make you preoccupied by it. I'm not going to be preoccupying myself with something else. So inna fi salati shughla. As for the person who had spoken because of his ignorance or because he forgot, his prayer is correct. Anybody would like to give me a proof for that? Something they've learned, a hadith which is well known, and so many times they've dragged it into this session or other sessions. Anyone? Huh? Yes, that's the one.
Is it the Sahaba that?
Is that the one you just said to me like this, or that?
No, I just meant.
It's actually linked to this.
How is it? I might be wrong then. Is
Well,
it the Sahaba that sneezed in the Salah?
it is linked to this. You remember that little hadith?
Yeah.
Where is Allah? It's
Is
linked to this.
Is it? Wow.
Yeah, it's the same hadith.
Oh, it's the same hadith?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know it was the same hadith.
Hadith Mu'adh al-Hakam al-Sulam. He embraced Islam recently. He came to the prayer. He knows from before Islam, when any person sneezes, he would say, bless you. Yarhamukallah. And that's even the kuffar say, bless you. But he doesn't know that Islam ties up lots of things to this. The rule, for example, is not to say Yarhamukallah unless the person said what? Alhamdulillah. And between you can't say it in the prayer. You know that. So somebody in the prayer sneezed. That person did not say Alhamdulillah. You sneeze. Mu'adh al-Hakam al-Sulami, not Mu'adh ibn Abi Sufyan, remember, the person. He said, Yarhamukallah. He spoke in the prayer. Yarhamukallah. Companions looked at him like this. He looked at him, gave him a look. He was scared. May my mother lose me, he said. He spoke again. May my mother lose. What have I done? So they started tapping on their arms, saying to him, quiet. He said, we're quiet. I was scared. So he said, may my mother, why are you looking at me? He was talking in the prayer. He was actually saying words. So when they started tapping and they hitting on all their thighs, like this, he what? Quiet. Shh. So I went quiet. When the Prophet said, when he finished, he thought he was going to have it. He had it. Prophet of Allah, he said, I sacrificed my father and my mother for him. I've never seen a good teacher before or after, better teaching than him. He started with this before he said what happened. He said, I sacrificed my father to the Prophet of Allah. I've never seen a teacher before or after better teaching than him. Before he said what happened. What happened? By Allah. He did not tell me off. He did not hit me. And he did not insult me. I mean, he deserves what? Yelling, insultation, and hitting. He deserves all of that. Because he said, he did not yell at me, he did not hit me, nor he had insulted me. SubhanAllah. He deserves all of that because of what he had done. And that's what he thought. He deserves all of that. And then he said to him, verily, the salah is not fit for anything from the people's talks. When it's only tasbih, takbir, and recitation of the Quran. I'm going to ask a question. If a person said, by Allah, I'm not gonna speak. This person said, by Allah, I am not gonna speak. Then he made tasbih. Did he violate his oath or not? Do you understand what I said? By Allah, I am not gonna talk. Then literally said, Subhanallah. Allahu Akbar. From that hadith, Al-Imam al-Nawawi, he said, he did not violate his oath. Because the Prophet of Allah, he said, the prayer is not fit for the talks of the people, for the kalam. And only tasbih and takbir. So tasbih and takbir is not talk of the people. So if you said, I'm not going to talk, and you said tasbih, you did not violate your oath. You're okay. It is not permissible for the person to make tashmeet, yarhamukallah, while he's praying to a person. He's praying. Or even that person is praying and you're not praying, you're not allowed to say yarhamukallah. But he who had done that deliberately, and he knows, then he's what? Praising back. But if he did not do it deliberately, if he's ignorant, then he's what? No problem. Why? Prophet of Allah did not command him, that man, Wa'al Hakim Sulami, to repeat his prayer. Just to continue the hadith, just to make sure that Khadr understand what we talked about. Because Muawiyah, he loved the Prophet because of that incident. He said, Messenger of Allah, I have a shepherd girl, Jariyah, she's a slave. And she was herding my sheep, and one day the wolf came and took one of the sheep. I got angry, and I'm the son of Adam. He said, I am the son of Adam. I get angry like anybody else. I slapped her. And I felt guilty. I don't want to set her free. Shall I set her free? He said, bring her to me. Prophet of Allah asked her two questions. Number one, where is Allah? Like that. She pointed to the heavens with her finger, with her index. Second question, who am I? He said, you are the messenger of Allah. He said, free her, for verily she's a believer. Free her, she's what? A believer. Two questions. Where is Allah? Like that. You ask a kid who doesn't know anything, he was a kid like that. Where is Allah? In that. Whether he's Chinese, English, Romanian, any person. Where is Allah? He'll say like this. Tell him, in Islam, where is God? He'll be like this. He will never say to you, Jesus, and the triune and Trinity. He will never come to that unless somebody had given him that. He'll come with his feeling. Something is in front, above him. That is his God. From above him. Aboveness is an honor. It's above you. Wherever you are, he's above you. Nobody can be above him. هو الظاهر وهو الباطن هو الأول والآخر. Now, number 4. Number 5. تفضل يا شيخ.
Number 5, Ibn al-Mundhir has reported that there was a...
What is number 5? So you missed it. Number 5, laughter. Yeah, but I mean, you didn't put the title, and then you should say number. Okay. You see number 4, number 3. Read number 3. So this one. You understand? You should state what it is, and then you say Ibn al-Mundhir. Okay. So the head title should be laughter. Then you say Ibn al-Mundhir had said consensus of, you understand? The validity of the prayer if there's a laughter. Yes. So put laughter before that, so you could know what we're talking about. So number 5 is laughter.
Number 5, laughter. Ibn al-Mundhir.
Khalas. I just said that. Number 6.
Number 6, an adult woman, donkey, or black dog passing in front of the praying person within the distance of his prostration.
He said within the distance of his prostration, he did not say between him and his sutra. Why? Because of the hadith it says, إِذَا قَامَ أَحَدُكُمْ يُصَلِّ, if one of you to stand to pray, فَإِنَّهُ يَسْتُرُهُ, for verily it will shield him, إِذَا كَانَ بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ مِثْلُ آخِرَةِ الرَّحْلِ, if he had in front of him the height of the back support of a person who's in a camel. You know the camel goes in the camel with a backbone, back wood that supports his back. The height of that to shield him. For when if he hasn't got that, then the following will invalidate his prayer. So if he's got it, don't worry. The hadith said if you have got it, so if you've got the sutra, you've got the wall, you've got the, okay? And these three things have managed to pass between you and your sutra, and they're not supposed to do so, don't worry about it. But if you haven't got a sutra, you haven't got anything in front of you, and then something from those three had passed between you and your prostration spot, that's between within you and the 1.5 meter from your feet, then your prayer is invalid. He said, يَقْطَعُ الصَّلَاةِ, and this is qata' butlan, will invalidate the prayer. What is that? Donkey?
Woman.
The women, and the women here, the adults, the children don't. So the women were adult, that means the one who have reached that adulthood. Whether they are 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, والكلب الأسود, the black dog. This hadith of hadith Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. Even though Aisha radiallahu anha in Sahih al-Muslim, she objected, you have made us equal to the dogs and the donkeys. For verily, I used to be lying down between the Prophet of Allah and the Qibla. And every time Prophet of Allah wants to prostrate, he would nudge me, and I will shrink, I would pull back my legs in order for him to prostrate. So how can we reconcile? Yalla, come on scholars here. Yalla, student knowledge, how can we reconcile? Aisha, she had objected. She said, you have made us equal to the donkeys and the black dogs. Well, the Prophet of Allah used to pray towards the Qibla, and I'm lying in front of him. And every time he wants to prostrate, he will give me a nudge. And she will pull her legs towards herself, and he will have more space, and he will make what? His prostration. I will understand from this hadith, number one, that the room of the Prophet of Allah is small. Number two, we want to understand the reconciliation. How? Yes, tell
She's not passing.
She's not passing. Well done. This is not passing. The passing is from one side to go to another side. So if a woman came in front of you and then she returned back where she came from, she's not passing. Passing means to go to the other side. Okay? So she's passing number. So if you pray to the back of a woman, let's say it's your wife, and she did not pass in front of you, she did not go this side or that side, you're okay. So the Prophet of Allah, he had her feet between him and the wall. He gave her a nudge, she pulled her feet, he prostrated. That's how we understand. And of course, Aisha, she did not know how the Prophet of Allah said these words. She thought that what had happened negates that. And that's why she, a number of things with Aisha she said, and she didn't know. Like for example, he who tells you that the Prophet of Allah urinated standing up, he's what? He's what? A liar. Is he a liar, the one who said he urinated standing up? No. And Aisha is not a liar. Aisha talks about the Prophet of Allah urinating in her house, and he always sit down. And that person who had narrated the Prophet ﷺ's urinating standing up, he saw him on the side. Abu Hurairah saw him, Hudayfa, he had saw him, seated. He saw him. They saw the Prophet ﷺ urinating standing up. Bala fi suraqati qawm. He urinated in a garbage. And he was standing up. Right. After this, alhamdulillah, we come to the prayer of the voluntary Salatul Tatawwu'.
voluntary prayers, their virtues.
Yes. Just read. Well, let me read some of the hadith letters just quickly. Salat Tatawwur, the voluntary prayer, is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us. The blessings of it can be seen in two things. Number one is that it protects my obligatory prayer. It will guard it. If I'm in my lazy time, shaitan comes to me and I'm lazy now, I will start dropping some of the voluntary, but my obligatory stays there. And if I have any more voluntary, I will start biting into my obligatory. So my voluntary is basically to protect. The second blessing of Allah, because of this voluntary, it will compensate anything missed from the obligatory on the day of resurrection. So if I had missed obligatory, Allah would say to the angels, look into his voluntary, compensate his missed obligatory. Blessings. Imagine that you haven't prayed a prayer deliberately in a particular time. How can you pray? You can't reverse the time. How can you missed Dhuhr, you did not pray. Deliberately. You deliberately did not pray Asr. Deliberately. How can you compensate for that prayer? You cannot reverse the time. So where is the rescue here? In the voluntary. Voluntary will rescue you. Your voluntary will compensate that missed obligatory. Otherwise, you are in trouble. Virtues of that, Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Inna awwala ma yuhasabu alayhi al-'abdu yawm al-qiyam." The first thing you're going to be accounted for in the day of resurrection, your prayer. If it's good, then everything will be good. If it's not, then you'll be a loser. And if one of the obligatory is not complete, Allah would say to his angels, look for my slave into his voluntary and compensate his missed obligatory. And the same thing will be done in the other acts of ibadah. So the same thing for the fast, same thing for the zakat, same thing for the hajj, everything. Look into his voluntary, compensate his missed obligatory. Alhamdulillah. Second title, please.
It is preferred for them to be performed at home.
By the way, and I don't want you as well to misunderstand the hadith of that Bedouin man. His narration came from different narration. His name is Liman. This is a Bedouin man and came to the Prophet ﷺ. He said, I'm going to question you hard questions. Hard questions. It's a program on the BBC called Hard Questions, isn't it?
Hard talk.
Hard talk. Sorry. Hard talk. I watched it a long time ago when there's a guy called Tim Sebastian, old head person, used to grill the kings and all of that, ask them questions, that nobody would dare to ask them, and some of the people would not even answer these questions. So the hard talk. So I'm going to give you hard talk, Messenger of Allah, and don't feel any grudge on your heart regarding me. He said, go ahead. This big one, he came, he didn't know where was the Prophet of Allah. Where is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? That man was leading, the white man there. And he haven't got any distinguishing clothes, just like the Prophet of Allah, like the companions. So he sat down and started grilling him, asking the Prophet of Allah hot questions. He said, your messenger had came to us, and he's coming from a tribe. And he claims that Allah commanded you to do 5 daily prayers. He said, yes. He said, by the one who commanded you to tell us to do the 5 daily, did he command you? Talk. He said, yes, he commanded me to do the 5 daily prayers. Your messenger claims that we have to fast 1 month in the year. He said, yes. By the one who had commanded you, Allah the Almighty, He commanded you. Did He command you to command us to fast a month in the year? He said, yes. And then for the zakat, the same thing. And the same thing for the Hajj. The hadith was also narrated in a different narration, where the man, he said, tell me what is obligatory upon me. 5 daily prayers. Except, Prophet said, if you want to add, voluntary. What about fasting? Ramadan. Except you want to do voluntary. What about zakah? Except you want to do sadaqah. So the person, he said, by Allah, I will not add or deduct. I will do only the obligatory. I will do only the what? Obligatory. I mean, I will do the Dhuhr and no Sunnah before, no Sunnah after. I will do Maghrib, no Sunnah before, before. I will do Fajr, 2 rak'ah, that's it. Prophet Allah, when he left the man, he said, أفلح in sadaqah. He will, in another narration, he will enter paradise if he is going to be abiding by what he said. If he fulfills his commitment, he will be successful. He will be in paradise. Now, don't you ever understand on this, oh, well, no problem, then I will leave and abandon what? My voluntary. Because the Prophet said, he will be successful if he what? Fulfills his commitment. But if he doesn't fulfill his commitment, he will not be successful. That's why the voluntary is very important. And at the time of the scholars before, if any person does not do his voluntary, his testimony will not be valid. We're not going to ask you to be a witness for whether you want it, because you don't pay the voluntary. Your adala goes down. Voluntary. Because it's very hard to abide by that statement just to pray the obligatory without the voluntary. That means you're going to miss some of the obligatory. But we're not saying the voluntary is obligatory, but we're saying it's a blessing. Don't leave it. You can pray it, sometimes you leave it, it's no problem, but don't make a commitment to not to pray it. Now,
It's preferred for them to be performed.
no, it's just we recommended and then read it again because I recommended to be in the house, yeah? Say it.
It is preferred for them to be performed at home.
Is it on? I can't hear you. On. Speak to the microphone loud, please. Don't say it again, please. I'm going to hear you.
It's preferred for them to be performed at home.
So it is preferred this voluntary to be at home, except if it is like the Qiyam Ramadan. Qiyam Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed in the masjid. He prayed 3 nights in the masjid. Other than that, all voluntary prayer is better to be prayed at home. At home or any place apart from the masjid. If it's not at home, if it's in the masjid, pray where people can't see you. Better. It's in a corner. Already the Prophet of Allah, he said the excellence of a person praying is voluntary where people can't see him, just like the excellence of praying your obligatory in Jama'ah. Another hadith, like the excellence of praying your obligatory in my masjid. Oh, if I pray for voluntary, but people can't see me, because I will be sincere. I will not be putting an act. I'm praying slowing down so people can see me in my sunnah. They could see me, mashallah, I'm praying properly. I'm putting the feet to the feet and the shoulder. On my sunnah. Obligatory is in the jama'ah. Voluntary, where people can't see. Best to pray at home. Or any home, not just your home. In the hotel. But especially your home, don't deprive your home from prayers. I know some people, they never offered a prayer at home. They're obligatory. And their sunnah is where? In the masjid. Or any place of the home. And the Prophet said, don't take your house as a graveyard. Don't make it as a graveyard. The Prophet said, recite Surah Al-Baqarah and Ali Imran in it. Or he said, make some of your prayers in them. Don't make them a graveyard. Graveyard, there is no recitation of the Quran. Graveyard, there is no prayer in them. Number 3. It's time.
The types of voluntary prayer.
Types of the voluntary prayer, there are two types, right? Read please.
Voluntary prayers are of the specific variety or of the unrestricted variety.
First one, what?
Specific variety, and the second is unrestricted variety.
Okay. The prayer of the tatawwu' is of two types, he's saying. Tatawwu', which is, that is not restricted, and one which is restricted, or you call it specific. The restricted one and the specific is the one which is linked to the obligatory. Either it's before or after. So 2 sunnah or 4 sunnah before dhuhr, 2 sunnah or 4 sunnah after dhuhr. You understand? 2 sunnah after asr, 2 sunnah before asr, 2 sunnah before maghrib, 2 sunnah after maghrib, 2 sunnah after isha, 2 sunnah before fajr. These are called sunan al-rawatib, specific. And those specific is of two types. One, that is emphasized, yes, and not emphasized. Mu'akkada or ghayr mu'akkada. So we're still talking about this type of what? Restricted, specific prayers, which are the one linked to the fard. Some of them are to be emphasized. Means the Prophet all the time would pray them, most of the time. Hardly would leave them. Another one which is not emphasized. Mu'akkada or ghayr mu'akkada. The one which is mu'akkada is, he says, 12 rak'ah. They are 12 rak'ah. Aisha radiallahu anha, she was asked by Abdullah ibn Shaqiq about the prayer of the Prophet ﷺ in his voluntary. So she said he used to pray before Dhuhr 4. And then he prayed the obligatory out, leading the people. Then he comes to the house and he prays 2. Then he prays the Maghrib, and then he comes to the house and prays 2. Count with me, please. How many now? 4 before Dhuhr, 2 after Dhuhr, 2 after Maghrib. How much is that? You understand that?
Yeah.
8. And then he prays the Isha, leading the people. Then he comes to the house and prays 2. How much? 10. And then he would pray from the night 9 rak'ah, including the witr. And he used to pray a long night. Until he comes to the Fajr, he would pray 2 rak'ah before he goes to pray the obligatory. How many rak'ah now? 12. Now this is 12. Some of the scholars even made it more than the 12. He made the Dhuhr before 4 and after 4. So if you depend upon this hadith, then it is 12. If you depend upon other hadith, it is 14. It is including also Sunnatul Dhuhr. So Sunnatul Dhuhr is being narrated to be 4 before and 4 after. It's been narrated as well 6, 4 before and 2 after. Okay? Some even makes it, so it's either 8 or 6 or even 4. 2 before and 2 after. All of those have been narrated. The Maghrib has 2 rak'ah. Also some of the scholars add to the Asr 2 rak'ah that the Prophet never left. That's the opinion of Shaykh al-Albani. 2 after Asr, as long as the sun is not yellow, it's white. Even though the Prophet said, La salata ba'da al-Asr, no prayer after Asr, but the hadith has got a continuation. No prayer after Asr unless the sun is white. As long as the sun is white, no problem, this salah. But if it's yellow, there's no salah. So you could pray 2, the Prophet he always prayed that 2 after Asr. And that's, by the way, you're going to have people contradicting each other over this, and yes, and you will find as well other scholars saying vice versa. There's no 2 rak'ah after Asr. Right, as for the non-emphasized, there are 2 rak'ah before Asr, he says, 2 rak'ah before Maghrib and 2 rak'ah before Isha. These are not emphasized because the Prophet sometimes he prayed, sometimes he doesn't. And this is the hadith, بَبَيْنَ كُلِّ أَذَنَيْنِ صَلَاةٍ. Between the two adhans, between adhan and iqamah, there is salah. So the adhan is called. Before the iqamah, there is what? 2 rak'ah. Even the Prophet of Allah, he said, may Allah have mercy upon a person who prays before Asr 4. So that's from the non-emphasized specific salah. Now, coming to the also between Maghrib and Isha, Prophet of Allah used to pray after Maghrib and Isha more than 2 sunnah. Two, but it's not emphasized. The emphasis is only 2. Now the Prophet ﷺ, what he used to recite in some of these salawat, Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, regarding the 2 rak'ah before Fajr, he used to recite, قُلْ وَاللَّهُ أَحَدْ قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. Also Abdullah ibn Abbas, he said, قُلُوا آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْنَا Al-Ayah, Surah Al-Baqarah, and also in the second one, آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَاشْهَدْ بِأَنَّا مُسْلِمُونَ. Ibn Mas'ud, he said, I can't count how many times I've heard the Prophet of Allah reciting the 2 rak'ah after the Maghrib and the 2 rak'ah before the Fajr, قُلْ يَا يُكَفِرُونَ قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. So we got now the 2 rak'ah even after the Maghrib from the Surah to recite قُلْ يَا يُكَفِرُونَ قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. You got that? Yes? I'm reading from the new version. I don't know if you got it or not. Let me just see. Yes, you got it. Al-Witr. Now,
The witr prayer, the prayer made up of an odd number of rak'ahs. The ruling and excellence of the witr prayer.
Al-Witr. Witr means odd. Shafa means even. This witr is one of the emphasized sunnah. Emphasize what? Sunnah. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Inna Allah witrun yuhibbu." Allah is witr, He loves witr. Ali ibn Abi Talib said the witr is not compulsory, laysa bihatim. It's not like your obligatory prayer, but the Prophet of Allah, he made witr and he said, Ya Ahl al-Quran, oh people of Quran, awtiru, make witr, فإن الله وتر يحب الوتر. There are things they are not there in your book, but I'm just adding them. It's time. Now that's in your book. It is permissible for the witr to be prayed after the Isha until Fajr. And I'm saying after Isha. You could be praying it after Isha and the time of the Maghrib. If you combine Maghrib and Isha, the traveler could combine the Maghrib time, isn't it? You pray your witr straight away, even it's Maghrib time. So the witr is after the Isha prayer, it's not after the Isha time. So once you pray the Isha prayer, you're allowed to pray witr. The later it is, the better it is. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said to Abu Bakr, when do you make witr? He said, I make witr before I sleep. So it is preferable for the person who does not wake up until Fajr to make it before he sleeps. Then he said to Umar, when do you make witr? He said, I sleep and then I make my witr. I mean before Fajr. He said to Abu Bakr, you have taken the hazm. Hazm means that something which is that you are sure, the assurance, you are sure. And as for Amr, he took in the wathiqa, which means like, Amr is the quwwah, that means you take in the thing which is harder. So Amr, you take in the harder, more and more. But if you're going to go to the harder and you're going to sleep, you better make the witr before you sleep. So if you are not really sure, but do witr before you sleep. How many rak'ah is the witr, and what is the description? Now these are lots of here things to be read. I'm going to give you the summarization. The witr can be done by 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, up to 11. So the witr can be what? 1. Prophet ﷺ said, فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُوتِرْ بِوَاحِدٍ. Let him make witr with only 1. Now, the witr, which is the 1, is to be the last of your 2s. So if you want to pray 3, pray 2, and then rak'ah. Pray 5, and 2, 2, and then 1 rak'ah. There's a different way of praying the 3, which is you pray with 1 tashahhud. Not like the Maghrib, like we do it here in Ramadan. So 1 rak'ah, 2nd rak'ah, 3rd rak'ah, you sit, tashahhud, salutation. That's the way to pray the 3. The 5, you pray the 2, 2, 1. Or you pray them 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. To the 5th one, you sit down, tashahhud, salutation. That's 5 rak'ah. If it's 7, then it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You sit down, make tashahhud, stand up for the 7th, and then you finish 7th, you make another tashahhud. Are you following me? So the 7 rak'ah, how many tashahhud? 5 rak'ah? 3 rak'ah? That's if you want to combine them. But if you want to do them 2, 2, 2, then you do the 2, 2, 2, 2, then 1. The 9. Prophet ﷺ, he prayed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sat down, tashahhud, and stood up for the 9th, finished it, tashahhud and salutation. How many tashahhud the 9? 2. So the 7, the 9, 2, 2. He never played the 11 one go like that. Just up to the 9. 9 in the maximum. Okay? So he never prayed in that, where the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then he sat down. No, 9 in the maximum. Right. Okay. Make the process, make your witr to be the last. Can I pray after the witr at 2 rak'ah? Yes, you can. Prophet of Allah said, you don't pray after the witr except for 2 rak'ah. So you have prayed your witr, and you woke up before Fajr, and you thought, I haven't prayed 11 rak'ah. I could pray what? 2, only 2. To add to my 3 or my 5, which I prayed before, my 7. You can pray 2 after 2, witr. Qunut in the witr. Qunut in the witr is supposed to be before you make the ruku'. That's the sunnah. Before the ruku'. And the wording is to say, sometimes you make this dua, sometimes you don't. اللهم اهدني فيمن هديت وعافني فيمن عافيت وتولني فيمن توليت وبارك لي فيما أعطيت وقني شر ما قضيت إنك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك وإنه لا يذل من وليت ولا يعز من عاديت. By the way, maybe it's missing. ولا يعز من عاديت is missing in my book here. تباركت ربنا وتعاليت لا منجى منك إلا إليك. This is a complete dua. So I don't know if you have that or not. As for the qunut in the faridah, in the fard prayer, then it is not allowed except if there is a crisis. And it's not supposed to be in a specific prayer, it could be in all the 5 daily prayers. And you should make it after ruku'. So the qunut of the witr is before the ruku', whereas the qunut of the nazila, which is in the obligatory prayer, is after the ruku'. And qunut of that after the ruku', it does not start in manh. Allahumma hdini fi man hadayt. No. It's a crisis. Oh Lord, for example, let's say an enemy attacked us. Oh Lord, save us from the enemy. Oh Lord, make the Muslim victorious. That's how you start it. Allahumma alayka bi'a'da'ika a'da'i din. Allahumma ansir ikhwana al-mujahideen. Like that. There's no Allahumma hdini fi man hadayt. But in the Ramadan, companions after the 15th night of Ramadan, they used to sometimes make the dua al-qunut after wudu. Why? Because they add to it. Before they don't add. Sometimes they say Allahumma. The person who makes qunut every night is not sunnah. That's against the sunnah. Sometimes they make, sometimes they don't make. After the 15th, you could make it after the ruku. Because the companion is to mix with the qunut other than that. Like for example, calling upon the a'da' Allah. Allahumma al kafara. Allahumma anzil alayhim rijsak. Or will put the punishment on them. Okay? So that's in the second part of Ramadan, second half of Ramadan I should say. As to make qunut in the Fajr like the Shafi'i madhab, that's a bid'ah. The Shafi'i madhab, where people that follow the Shafi'iyya, you'll find them making qunut every Fajr. And that's a bid'ah. I don't know if you've seen it here, but in our country it's well spread. Have you seen it? Okay. You learn something. You go to one of the countries and you said, qunut the Fajr, you will know. This guy is making the qunut al-Fajr, Allahumma hadini fi hadayt. That's a full water. What's that to do with the Fajr? And you pray every Fajr. If they don't really make the qunut, they make sujood sahw. Part of the prayer. Because it's based upon hadith which is not authentic. Qiyamul Layl. Qiyamul Layl means that the prayer of the witr you pray at night. It doesn't mean it's different prayer. Qiyamul Layl, it means that we do it during the late night. So the being negative. So Qiyamul Layl. Qiyam is part of your witr. So the rak'at is 11 rak'ah. Adding the two sunnah of the Isha, which is 13. The Jama'ah is recommended in Ramadan. The women, in terms of Jama'ah wise, their house is better for them to pray the Jumu'ah, unless there is a talk which is good from the person who is delivering the khutbah and she wants to learn, then good for her to come. But her Jama'ah, like Dhuhr and Asr and Maghrib and Isha, a prayer in the house better or in the masjid? In the house. Same Ramadan. Taraweeh. Taraweeh for the women is in the masjid. Do you understand? Because in the house they could make their own jama'ah of Dhuhr and Asr with the children. But Taraweeh has to be in the masjid, behind the imam. This is the only prayer where women are recommended for them to pray where? In the masjid. In Ramadan, in other than Ramadan, if let's say the husband woke up, the father woke up, and he made, for example, Qiyam Layl for witr, and his wife and his children, for example, joined in, no problem. As long as it is not pre-organized. It's not like, let's make Jama'ah of Sunnah. No. I started my witr, and my family joined me, is no problem. She saw me praying, and she should join me, no problem. Prophet ﷺ, he said, if the man woke up his family from the night and they prayed together, then there will be from the Dhakirin. And we know that the Prophet ﷺ did a number of times Qiyam. Aisha never joined. She did not join in the prayer. To show you it is not to be pre-planned. But if they pray together, because she just saw him praying, she joined, no problem. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud joined, if you remember the Prophet in his night prayer. Hadayf al-Yaman as well. It's got the back problem. Finally stood him back because he stayed up all night in that prayer, which is famous prayer. Baqarah, Ali Imran, Nisa, in one rak'ah. Allahu Akbar. Now we come to the last thing, which is Qada Qiyam al-Layl. How to compensate if we have missed the Qada. Now the qada, it is here with the meaning of linguistic, is not the meaning of the fiqh. Meaning, if you have missed the qada deliberately, if you missed the prayer deliberately, there's no qada, there's no compensation. We call it in Urdu qaza. Yeah, or qaza. There's no such thing qaza unless you forgot or you slept through the time. So you planned to make qiyam, you slept. You forgot. You're having very nice food, for example, you forgot. Then in that case, yes, this is the qada, we call it al-qada shari. Al-qada means here to perform the prayer in the time. Even though you are outside the time. Because of your legitimate excuse, your time will extend. So the Prophet said, he who slept, did not pray his witr, then, or he forgot to pray his witr, then let him pray it once he remembers it. So you can pray it even dhuhr time. You can pray it after sunrise. Once you remember. To show the importance of the witr. And let me tell you something. Prophet of Allah gave you the reward already. Allah already gave you the reward. He said, he who had come to his bed and he wanted and he intended, his intention, to wake up in the night and pray his qiyam. Then because he slept tiring, and he was so tired, he slept and his eyes couldn't really open them until it was morning, everything he had intended to do, it will be written for him, and his sleeping will become sadaqah for him from Allah. Allah gave you sadaqah, sleep. And it's giving you the reward of that intention that you want to do the qiyam. Now the Prophet ﷺ, he said, if the person did not pray the qiyam because he was ill or something else, then he would pray during the day 12 rak'ah. Now how can we reconcile between the two hadiths? Pray 12 rak'ah, and he who had forgotten his witr, or he slept through the time of the witr, then let him pray it, witr as it witr, once he remembered. That's a controversial issue among the scholars. The best opinion I've heard is from our Shaykh al-Albani, rahimahullah, is to say that if you are a person who had missed the qiyam because you forgot the witr of yours, because you forgot or you slept through the time, then you pray your qiyam once you want. Remember, 11 rak'ah you pray it, 9 rak'ah you pray the same thing. But if the person, he had missed it because of other than these two, he missed it because he did not plan anyway, or he had an illness, like it says here, illness other than the sleeping through the time or forgetting, then he prayed 12 rak'ah, 12 rak'ah during the day. It is disliked to abandon qiyam if you got used to it. If you got used to make qiyam, it is disliked to leave it. Prophet of Allah ﷺ, he said to Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, Ya Abdullah, don't be like so and so. He used to stand up, make the qiyam, and then suddenly he left the qiyam. We stop inshallah with al-duha, and I think we've done a lot today. It's a heavy dose. MashaAllah, plenty of pages there. And by the way, we need a screwdriver to do this.